Where on earth did you get your brain? Viewers ask some tough questions about radio dating, and we respond to viewer questions in an extended play version of the mailbag. This is Genesis Week. And welcome to this episode of Genesis Week, the weekly program of creationary commentary on news, views, and events pertaining to the Origins controversy. Proudly brought to you by the supporters of Core Ottawa, Citizens for Origins Research and Education, and now carried on the Christianema Network, Christian cinema at its finest. And thank you to you, our financial supporters, who make all this possible. Excellence in Power Broadcasting set up this week in my sister's basement in behind the hot water tank. We continue to broadcast the information the anti-creationists don't want you to see or hear, and giving glory to our creator while doing it. Remember, if you get lost in cyberspace, just punch in Wazooloo.com, that's me, or GenesisWeek.com, and you will find us. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up to date and get extras like Crevo rants and special interviews with our guests. I'm your host, Ian Juby. As we have said here before on Genesis Week, God did not say be transformed by the removal of your mind. Rather, we believe God gave you a brain for a reason, and He expects you to use it. So, it's interesting that our first news stories of this week center around the brain. Harlix and 66 other researchers from the Allen Institute for Brain Science reported the results of a study of the publicly accessible Allen Human Brain Atlas this past week in Nature magazine. They concluded that the human brain was really complicated. Yeah, I know, you probably think that's a bit of a no-brainer, but bear with me here, as this study provided quite a bit of fascinating insight into both the construction of the brain and the origins debate, which ironically, a prerequisite to participating in the debate is that you must have a brain. It's interesting to note that the research was virtually devoid of any mention of evolution. One brief sentence, which just goes to show you that, contrary to what is often claimed, evolution is not required to carry out good science. Now, the quick lowdown on the Nature report is that human brains show very little variation among each other, showing that differences among people probably has more to do with programming or wiring within the brain, not brain structure. Now, the study certainly ends the myths that we use 10% of our brains, only 10%, or that left-handed people or right-handed people have different structures of the brain. A major part of the study was examining how genetics are involved in the construction of the brain, and they determined that a whopping 84% of all of our genes were expressed or turned on somewhere in the brain. Their press release was entitled, "Human brains share a consistent genetic blueprint and possess enormous biochemical complexity." Blueprint, huh? Complexity, huh? Let's make an analogy. We build a computer which is so powerful that it is self-aware and has the capability of building other computers just like itself and even repairing itself. And we're going to affectionately call this computer HAL. HAL begins to learn how to read the blueprints on how to build HAL, which are stored on HAL's hard drive. All of the systems just function without his understanding of how they work, but he wants to try and read the blueprints and understand the interaction between the blueprints and his system. You can just imagine how complicated, how massive HAL would have to be in order to be self-aware, self-producing, and repairing. And to have enough intelligence to read blueprints on how to build himself. HAL, of course, is so incredibly complicated that even he struggles to read his blueprints. HAL struggles to understand how HAL himself works and how the blueprints are used to repair himself and build others. Now, after spending years and years poring over the blueprints and examining himself and other computers, HAL comes to an incredible realization. He finally realizes how he came into existence. HAL concludes he had no creator, that the blueprints had no designer, no engineer. HAL concludes that he was the result of natural processes such as wind, water, erosion, lightning, etc. Water just eroded minerals out of rocks like silicone, which just happened to mix in the right mixtures on a microscopic level with gallium and arsenic to make microchips. Random lightning strikes helped fuse the semiconductors together. The first self-replicating computer just happened to form in an area rich in copper and rubber trees, so that lots of wires just formed naturally and were accidentally incorporated into the first computer. Now you see where I'm going with this. The story is utterly preposterous. I mean, even Skynet had an intelligent designer and, ironically, tried to kill its creator. Now, in my Atheists Have Higher IQs rant, I asked Dave the Atheist a provocative question. Let me ask you the same provocative question. Do you think your brain was intelligently designed? If you said yes, then congratulations on winning the Rational Thinking Award. If you said no, then you win the honorary C.S. Lewis Award. C.S. Lewis was a former stubborn atheist who set out to refute Christianity once and for all, and wound up becoming a born-again Christian. One of his major stumbling blocks turned out to be what we just described here. As he wrote in the book, God in the Dock, if there is no creator, then the solar system was brought about by an accidental collision, then the appearance of organic life on this planet was also an accident, and the whole evolution of man was an accident too. If so, then all our present thoughts are mere accidents, the accidental byproduct of the movement of atoms. And this holds for the thoughts of the materialists and astronomers as well as for anyone else's. But if their thoughts, i.e. of materialism and astronomy, are merely accidental byproducts, why should we believe them to be true? I see no reason for believing that one accident should be able to give me a correct account of all the other accidents. It's like expecting that the accidental shape taken by the splash when you upset a milk jug should give you a correct account of how the milk jug was made and why it was upset. Now, if someone told you that HAL, our computer, had no designer and no creator, you undoubtedly would draw one of only a few possible conclusions about this person. Either A, this person is on serious drugs, or B, this person should be on some serious drugs, C, this person is incredibly ignorant and really needs to be educated, or D, this person has ulterior motives for saying such irrational things. So why is it then suddenly irrational to suggest that the human brain was designed? But of course, this is precisely what Ferris Jabber over at Scientific American was arguing, that our brains evolved. In fact, he was adamant in his article that we can't even understand our brains unless we take into account how they evolved. He even entitled his article, Why We Need to Study Brains Evolution in Order to Understand the Modern Mind. Well, wait a minute. This is like Hal saying he cannot understand how he works until he understands how his microchips formed without a creator. He then launches off the wrong premise, because he did have a creator, and natural processes cannot form microchips. So how far do you think Hal will get in his understanding? The idea that a larger brain means you are more intelligent is an old evolutionary leftover simply because we are assumed to have evolved from apes, which are dumb and have smaller brains than we do. In Ferris's blog, he reiterates this suggestion. The most intuitive and tempting explanation is that the expansion of our brains during the Paleolithic paralleled the emergence of more sophisticated intelligence, as partially evidenced by the existing archaeological record of increasingly complex tools and cookware. Well, let's take that and run with it for a second, shall we? I have here a reconstruction of the skull of a Neanderthal man, our human ancestor who is oft depicted as a dumb cave dweller. After all, we modern humans are smarter than our ancestors, right? Again, that is an evolutionary assumption. Now, I am a member of Mensa, the International High IQ Society. In order to be a member of Mensa, you have to have an IQ in the top 2% of the population. In other words, you have to be a certifiable genius. You are watching this program. Clearly, you have a higher intelligence than average. I think you should apply to Mensa to take the test. Now, I'm not trying to show off here. I'm making a point. Let us compare the size of Neanderthal's brain with mine. Now, if brain size is an indicator of intelligence, and I have a genius level IQ, then Neanderthal was a freaking super genius who clearly had an IQ well off our modern day IQ charts. So if the evolutionary assumption is true that a bigger brain means you're smarter, then ironically people less intelligent than Neanderthal man are looking back at Neanderthal's remains and saying, look at that, we're becoming less intelligent, that's evolution. No offense intended. I'm also ignoring the enormous amount of paleontological and archaeological evidence that Neanderthals were completely intelligent human beings. Now, Newton talked about how everything had a first cause. Well, the first cause of intelligence and reason must be intelligent and reasonable. That Creator God says to you, "Come now, let us reason together, says the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they shall be as wool." God first warned Adam and Eve that if they disobeyed, they must die. Now, this is not at all unreasonable. If you were the Creator, and you created a being with so many frightening capabilities that human beings have, it would not be unreasonable to tell them that if they rebel against you and disobey, that they would have to die. The problem is, He loves us all very much, and sadly, we have all sinned against Him. He does not want to judge you, but He can't let rebellion go unpunished either. So that is why He took it upon Himself to sacrifice His only Son in your place. Jesus lived a human form on this earth, and though He never sinned, He died the death you and I deserve to restore our relationship to God the Father if we turn from our sin and live our lives for Christ. It is very much like starting over. Jesus called it being born again, and it is just a matter of believing that He was the Son of God and died for you and asking Him to give you His promise of the Holy Spirit, which was a seal that you belong to God. Ron from Texas wrote a very lengthy and excellent email containing a wheelbarrow load of questions. Now, obviously, I can't address them all at once. However, he wrote in part, "You seem adamant that the Earth is young and not millions of years old. Most of your beliefs seem to follow that the geology and dating methods are flawed. I cannot understand how every dating method could be flawed. You never really say that every method is flawed, but seem to state many instances where dating is proven flawed." And Rob S. also wrote in from, well, somewhere. "According to Dr. Jim Mason, dating methods are able to date back in time 90,000 years. Here on Earth, the present isn't the key to the past due to the whole worldwide flood. So we can only date back to approximately 4,359 years ago. However, in space, there was no such disaster, so then I should say it would be easy to know the Earth, moon, stars, etc. are not billions of years old. If we collect some moon dust or moon rock or other space material, it should be a piece of cake to know this, in my humble opinion. Why are scientists still clinging to the billions of years? I'm looking forward to your answer." Thanks for writing in these excellent questions, guys. For those of you who tune in regularly, you'll remember Aaron from Ottawa wrote in asking me to respond about how I address the appearance of being a conspiracy theorist. Interestingly, this all ties in with Rob and Ron's questions. I go into much more detail about the radio dating methods and their failures in Crevo Rant number 100, Dating Methods, as well as Crevo Rant number 101 on carbon-14 dating. However, I will give a very brief synopsis here. For Ron's sake, I will say it for the record. Radiometric dating methods are inherently flawed because of the assumptions, namely that evolution trumps the facts. Carbon-14 dating might be close, but it too has untestable assumptions built into it. To obtain an age of a rock, a geologist will first of all identify the ages of rock layers above and below the one in question. The ages come from the underlying assumption of evolution and an Earth billions of years old. If the rock beneath it is Carboniferous, for example, he will then assume that the rock on top must be younger. After applying radio dating to the sample rock, if the age lines up with what he expects, the age is accepted. If he obtains an age that is unexpected, it is assumed to be the wrong age, and so it is thrown in the garbage. This is what geologists are taught to do. So as you can see, the underlying evolutionary assumptions trump the facts. A classic example of all this in action is the case of Skull 1470, which caused dozens and dozens of different radio dates to be arrived at until they finally got the one they were looking for. And the age they were looking for was based on evolutionary assumptions. So of course the dates line up with evolution. It's circular reasoning. I cover all this in detail in part 21 of Complete Creation. Now, with respect to Rob's question, while it is true that a global flood around 4,300 years ago would totally throw everything amok when it comes to radio dating is pretty much exclusive to lavas anyway. It was lavas that were brought back from the moon, and the same radio dating methods used on lava flows here on Earth were applied to them. But yet, when even isochron dating methods are used to test modern lava flows, of which we know the age, They invariably come back with ages in the millions to billions of years. If we know the methods don't work here, why trust them on the moon where they don't know if they are working or not?
Funny, fast, and furious. Ian's Crevo rants cover a multitude of topics in an easy-to-understand, comical way. Complicated subjects that normally make your brain hurt a lot less when Ian explains them, while wearing his anti-government mind-reading equipment. Have questions about carbon-14 dating, natural selection, thermodynamics, or what on earth is he doing there? 3 volumes of rants on DVD. Take your pick for $15 each, plus shipping and handling, or order all 3 as a package and save yourself $10. Order online today at Ian's bookstore.
Mail for me? I forget. You're supposed to cut the blue wire or the red wire? Or I could just pull the detonator. If you'll recall, in our premiere show a couple of weeks back, I read an email from Aaron in Ottawa. Aaron had been introduced to me through a common friend, Ian M., also in Ottawa. In his original email to me, Ian had laid out some of the questions or critiques that Aaron had presented, and one of which I would like to address. Now, these are Ian's words, not Aaron's, but I really wanted to address the remark because it so eloquently spelled out an issue. He also objects to what he believes as an overarching assertion on your part that because you show in your vids deceitful anti-creationists, that all evolutionists are like that. And some all evolutionists, when they open their mouth and talk Darwinian evolution and millions of years, they are lying, etc. He believes that you are showing the crackpots of the evolutionary side and not the reputable nice guys that the Darwinian evolution have to offer. In large part, I have to agree that that was the case. I'm grateful that Genesis Week ran on YouTube before moving to broadcast because there were several lessons I had to learn. Now, please also notice that even Aaron, who may still describe himself as of evolutionary persuasion, was not the only one to write to me and complain about the anti-creationists. I am very careful to use that term because such people are very different from the evolutionists, who are people I am attempting to appeal to and challenge on this show. In contrast, the anti-creationists are not reasonable people. They are irrational, emotional, and cling to evolution religiously. This is not about truth with them. This is about propping up their religion of evolution and believing it no matter what. As even many evolutionists have noted, the quality of the anti-creationist arguments, well, there is no quality of anti-creationist arguments. It is usually irrational and with an intelligence quotient containing a negative integer. The problem was, it seemed the anti-creationists were the only people I was hearing from. And they often presented their arguments publicly with great authority, and they sounded really convincing to some people. So I wound up dealing with these arguments, which had an intelligence quotient containing a negative integer. But because I was arguing evolution with an irrational person, it sadly wound up conveying the message that I thought anyone who believed evolution was not rational and had an intelligence quotient containing a negative integer. Now this saddens me because this is the farthest thing from my mind. It is not at all what I believe. The vast majority of evolutionists that I know are good, honest people who want to know the truth. They are interested in science because they're intellectuals. They believe evolution because the theory has the appearance of being intellectual. They were taught it as fact in school. Why would they question it? In fact, I had multiple evolutionists complain to me about the anti-creationists, specifically saying what Ian and Aaron implied, that these anti-creationists did not represent the evolutionists. That in fact, by even addressing anti-creationists, I was, in effect, participating in strawman arguments, because I was addressing anti-creationist arguments which did not accurately represent the evolutionary community. So with the recommendations of some pastor friends of mine on the East Coast, thank you Rob and Dave, I took a number of steps to counter this problem. I put my YouTube channel comments on moderation, banned several abusive YouTubers, and added certain emails to my spam blocker list. Any comments that were simply insulting or abusive, or had no quality content or purpose, or detracted from the quality discussions, were deleted. That dealt with probably about 90% of the problems right there. I also emphasized that the bar was now raised for quality of comments and questions, and for the show itself. This is a quality show. Providing quality information, I expect quality responses. As a result, I have already noticed a flood of quality questions and comments coming in, to the point where it is just simply not possible to cover them all. I will try and address as many as I can, but we only have so much time on the show. I had a ton of comments relating to my claim a couple of shows back that evolution includes abiogenesis. Many objected, to which I can only point you to the many evolutionary sources I mentioned in Crevo Rant number 80, Abiogenesis and Evolution. Some critics cried foul, saying that although I know abiogenesis and evolution are not one and the same, I include them together. Well, wait a minute now. Natural selection and evolution are not one and the same, yet you would include them together and say they are intrinsically connected. So just what is it that is upsetting some of you so much that you are so desperate to try and separate evolution from the origin of life? Potango 101 and I had a discussion in the comments section of YouTube, in which he pointed out that if evolution is a supernatural process, then so is creation, to which I agreed. In fact, I specifically stated that in the premiere show. Potango 101 then replied, then I would say, given your criteria for science, creationism is at a severe disadvantage. Nothing about creationism is really observed. We do, however, notice that nature is all about simple to more complex. This can be previous simpler related species, or the fact that everybody does it for the first 9 months of their lives. Creationism says it has always been that complex, but this is the exact opposite of what is observed over and over again. Thank you for writing in. Now, I do not fault Potango for saying this, as this is really what is presented and taught in our schools. The reality is the exact opposite, though. A developing fetus has nothing to do with evolution, and babies are actually more complex than adults, as they have not yet accumulated the lifetime of mutations we all gather throughout time. I also cited multiple cases of de-evolution in last week's show, which is what we see consistently throughout nature. Even we humans are deteriorating genetically, and at a remarkable rate. Not only does this show we are de-evolving, the opposite of upwards-onwards evolution, it also shows that life could not have been around for millions of years, because our DNA is deteriorating so rapidly. I discussed this in detail in Crevo Rant number 78, The Boat That Don't Float. Now, the whole reason I brought up the supernatural aspect of creation and evolution was to point out how the scientific tool of intelligent design, which even 5-year-olds use every day, can be used to determine which faith fits the facts better, creation or evolution. It clearly points to an intelligent designer, a creator. We are taught that the fossil record shows a sequence of evolution, even leaving out the powerful evidence that people living at the same time as dinosaurs. This teaching of a fossil sequence is also patently false. Even evolutionist David Ralph for the Chicago Field Museum has mentioned this in writing. For example, you'll find plants from the Carboniferous up with the dinosaurs, as well as clams and allegedly ancient fishes. You'll find reverse geologic sequences, where allegedly older rocks are on top of younger ones. There are hundreds of these in North America alone, of which I've had the privilege of studying 8 of them so far. You'll find stasis in the fossil record, not change over time. You'll find extinction in the fossil record, which is a loss of species, a loss of genetic variation and information, which is the exact opposite of upwards-onwards evolution. Now, I realize I'm saying a lot here, and it will take a lot of time to go into detail on each of these points, but I will discuss them in more detail if you will continue to tune into the show. The point being, the evidence we actually observe is the opposite of upwards-onwards evolution, yet it fits in just fine with the creation account. It always amazes me how quickly the word liar comes out when people write to me. I might remind such viewers that falsely accusing someone of lying is in itself a lie, which means you're a liar. May I suggest this is extremely presumptuous on your part to presume that I am lying. You did not think that perhaps I was just plain wrong, for example, or that I perhaps made a mistake, or perhaps we simply have a difference of opinion or interpretation. Nor did you ever seem to consider you might be the one who made a mistake. You simply assumed I was lying and hurled such accusations publicly. One classic example was from YouTuber Complex Adaptive, who wrote in about the Angus Reid poll I mentioned in the premiere episode of Genesis Week. Come on, Ian, stop lying to the people. I looked up your references to the AR report, 2007 results nationwide. Answer 1, 2, or 3, 59%, 22%, and 19% respectively, not 58%, 28%, and 14%. These results are not even in the report. Mixing in apples and oranges does not work either. 2008 results by province. Answer 1, 2, or 3, Alberta 37%, 40%, and 23%. Comparing a national result and provincial results side by side and making trend comparisons is statistically incompetent. There are no 2007 provincial results in the report. Look, I don't know what report you were reading, because both polls are available for free download on the internet, here and here. Please note in the preamble of the 2007 poll, Angus Reid wrote, "But Albertans were not more likely to believe in creationism than the rest of the country. Their views came very close to the national numbers, with 58% registering belief in evolution as the process driving human development, and 42% agreeing that dinosaurs and humans lived at the same time." And let's take a look at a screen capture of page 3, which shows the breakdown of results, province by province, which you said was not even in the report, and says, oh look, 58%, 28%, 14%. Gee, that's what I said. In the 2008 poll, Angus Reid wrote in the preamble, "Albertans are the only group in the entire survey in which more respondents chose the theory of creationism over evolution. The underlining was theirs." Well, gee, I'm pretty sure that's what I said. Thanks for writing in anyway. YouTuber Sloth Ape wrote in, "Lack of intermediate fossils. Oh, give me a break. When will this argument die? Hundreds have been found, so stop lying." Well, apparently anyone who disagrees with Sloth Ape is a liar. Well, I acknowledge that there are lots of fossils interpreted to be intermediate. It's an interpretation, subject to opinion. And the opinions change even among the evolutionists. And the bottom line is, even if there were hundreds, there should be lots more from the hundreds of millions of years of evolution. So my statement is true and accurate, even assuming your blanket statement were correct. Now, there's disagreement even among the evolutionists over what fossils are intermediate, and with good reason. In other cases, like the coelacanth and Pacaya, both are claimed to be examples of intermediates or ancestors of humans, yet both are still around today, unchanged. Intermediate fossils like Tiktaalik get tossed out of the tree of intermediates all the time by new discoveries, such as the fossil footprints in Poland. So much for all of the fishapod intermediates. Now, there's much more to this subject, but I will simply leave it aside for now because I deal with these alleged intermediate fossils all the time on this show. Well, that's it for this week's show. I'm your host, Ian Juby, saying thank you for watching. Please join us again next Genesis week. You can send in your comments and questions in a number of ways, and let us remember the words of our Creator, the Lord Jesus Christ, who said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but through me." See you next week.
We need your support to help keep this program on the air. You can help by making a tax-deductible donation to Core Ottawa, Canada North Post Office Box 72075, Ottawa, Ontario, K2K2P4. You can also sign up for Ian's newsletter detailing current research and news items at ianjuby.org.